Hello, everybody, and welcome to 4 Deep Sports Talk here at the news station, 1320 AM WARA. I am Catherine Conley, a.k.a. KC, with Dominic Damiano, Justin Ferreira, a.k.a. the Sportsmaster, Joe DeVerns, and we have Josh Perry from the HotCockSports.com.
Very good. That's pretty good. Now, make sure you watch you watch your levels on this meter. You got to make sure they don't peg out. So today's kind of a training day too, and first of all, I got to apologize because I called Josh. Oh my God, like an hour ago, and I obviously messed up the dates. And he came out here. I think he got 3 speeding tickets, and the police told him. He told the police where he was going. Like, oh sure. So they ripped up the police tickets on the highway. So, Josh, thanks for taking the time for coming on.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So can you hear him when he speaks? When Josh just talked, could you hear him?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Not in the mic, though.
Not in the mic? All right, hold on.
No problem.
I apologize, too.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
So that's fine. There we go.
Now I can hear him.
Now you can hear him good. All right, so make sure these levels don't peg out, and we'll go over that in a minute. All right, so one thing we did, Josh, is we kind of did a rough rundown of all the other conferences. And you know me, I love getting you on, and you educate us, and you and Ryan do a great job promoting Hockomock sports. So with that being said, we actually have Joe DeVerns from Bishop Fien. He'll be coming on at the bottom half of this hour. And one of the things is, I don't know if you want to pick a spring sport, or you just want me to wing it, or whatever you have lined up. I know you have the schedule and the stats in front of you.
Yeah, no worries. Whichever one you want to start with.
All right, we'll go with the most popular one. One of the most popular ones, because they're all popular depending on the parent. But anyone who likes high school sports is usually, again, any sport. So we'll go Kelly Rex. We'll go baseball.
Sure.
We have Franklin at 5-1. Taunton High, the defending state champions, 3-1. Milford, that's holding at 500. Attleboro, 1-3. And I thought we were in trouble there for a minute. Let me just suck in my gut so I don't get this guy in trouble. So which one is it? It's that one. Thank you. As Dave Kane bails us out, and he will be on the next show on Local Access TV. All right. So which one, Frank? What do you think of Franklin's 4-0 start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was tough coming into the season because we didn't. It's been 2 years, obviously, since any of these kids have played spring sports. And for some of these kids, they weren't even on varsity 2 years ago, if you were a freshman or a sophomore. So for us, it was a lot of kind of guessing, trying to figure out who would be good. But I think we were pretty sure coming into the season that Franklin and Taunton would both be pretty strong. Taunton brought a lot of players back from that team that made the run to the state title in 2019. So, and, Franklin has become a state power, really, in baseball under Zach Brown, getting to the Super 8 a couple times in a row now. So I don't think it's much of a surprise. I think that Franklin is in first place. They've been pretty dominant through these first 7 games. It's been a lot of blowouts, a lot of big wins for them. Having only given up 14 runs through 7 games is pretty impressive. So.
That's really impressive.
But, there's a big showdown coming up this week. They take on Taunton, 2 games coming up next week, so that's a real showdown for the
what day is that again?
So, I think they play Monday and Tuesday. So that's really those 2 games will really probably decide the league title this year. And I think those are the 2 games that everybody sort of has penciled in and circled as the big ones coming up. So. And then, of course, they still have Mansfield and Attleboro on their schedule as well. So things are not set in stone right now with Franklin. They may be undefeated, but they're about to play some really good teams. Our baseball is typically very competitive. We don't really have, while Franklin's probably the team that's at the top at the moment, I think anybody can beat anybody on any given day. It's always depends on the pitching matchups, just depends on how things go. So it's certainly an impressive start, but there's some big games coming up.
So if I go there, I know I'll see you either Monday or Tuesday.
One of us will probably be there one of those days. I don't know. It's a little tough. Those 3:45 starts.
Yeah, they are starts, especially when you have a regular job.
I can't really get to too many of those. So we'll see. I don't know. One of us, the second one's at 7:00, so it's possible.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
That's nice. Is it home Franklin, home Taunton, or vice versa?
Taunton's home on Monday, and then Franklin is home on Tuesday.
Now,
Franklin likes their 7:00 starts. They like to play their baseball under the lights.
so what about Milford as we finish up the Kelly Rex? Is that a surprise being 2-2?
No, I think that's pretty much where we. I mean, I think that Milford is another good program that, the league is just really competitive when it comes to baseball. And the Davenport, I think, is a little bit better than maybe it's been a little bit deeper than it's been in some of the past couple of years. And, when you're playing those crossover games that you think are going to be, maybe would have been wins in other seasons, this year, it's very competitive. So they're 2-2 in the league, 2-5 overall. But, I think they're a decent team, and it's one of those things where on any given day, you could come out and they can pull an upset. They can beat another team. I think Mansfield being 1-3 right now is a little bit of a surprise, just because Mansfield has been a Super 8 contender for the last couple of seasons. So maybe that's a little bit of a surprise. But again, it's they've had to play Taunton a couple of times. They've already had to play KP. So it's not. Yeah, I don't know if there's. It's hard to say if it's a surprise or not, because we haven't seen a lot of these kids.
True.
We don't really know who's back and who's available. So.
True. There's only 7-8 games under their belts. I mean, it's hard to judge. I mean, of course, Canton took advantage. Again, you mentioned a little bit about the Davenport. Canton's obviously taking advantage of what's being thrown at them, being 6-1 right now, hanging there in the conference at 3-1. Then you have Foxborough, another young team. But like you said, the Hawk is really competitive with baseball.
It is, and I think Canton, I don't think that's much of a surprise, actually, coming into the season. They had some good arms. Andrew Middleton, perfect game, struck out 16 in his first career start.
Yeah.
A junior. I think we get him for 1 year. I think he's already lined up to go PG for next year. But
oh, really?
They have some experienced arms, and I think that makes a big difference coming into a kind of a weird season. Haven't played in a while. They had some kids that had played as sophomores and freshmen, so they had a little bit of experience. They have some arms. So them being 3-1 and being at the top of the Davenport right now, I think is kind of to be expected. Foxborough, I think, has had a good bounce back year. They're another team that came back with some experienced arms. North Attleboro has Dennis Colleran, who's heading to Northeastern next year. Yep. So, I think they're kind of riding him right now. He's off to a great start himself. They've had some tougher games against some of the Kelly Rex teams, which is why they're at 3-4 overall. But I think it's really balanced, and I think it's great for the kids to have these close seasons. It's been a while for them. They've been looking forward to this. They really wanted to have this season, and to have a title race.
Yeah,
it's great. It's a great bonus.
Now, who's the gentleman with the 16 Ks again from Canton?
Andrew Middleton.
And he's a senior.
He's a junior.
Oh, he's a junior.
Yep.
And
so this is his first season on varsity.
Oh, so they got that on coming back next year.
No, he's going. As far as I know, he's going prep next year.
Oh, he's going prep.
That's the expectation. So we get him for one spring, and then I think he's going to prep for a season before college. So.
Oh, okay.
Does prep mean like you're going to college, like really, or is it something different?
He's going to go to a prep school, one of the. For I don't know, I'm actually not sure where he's going, but it could be like a Dexter or a Tabor or something like that. Typically, they reclassify. So if he goes next year as a senior, he'd actually go as a junior. So he gets like an extra year of high school and plays.
So that's a private school deal. When they say prep, it's more private.
Oh.
Kind of like, I don't know if Atlantis Charter would qualify as a private school. Probably not. Hingham Academy, something like that, to consider a private school.
Like the Tabors and the Tabors and Dexters of the world. A lot. You can also do it as a PG. Like you could also do it as after you graduate. So you'll see some kids will do that. Hockey kids in particular.
Oh yeah.
After they graduate, they go and spend a year at a prep school before college. Kind of gets them more visibility to colleges.
Getting them more like prepared for like what's to come.
Yeah, from an athletic standpoint, for sure. Yeah. I can't speak to the academics. I have no
Oh,
idea.
yeah.
Schools
Yeah, exactly.
I have no idea.
No, me too. Maybe the sports master knows about them private schools. Do you have,
No, I know little about private schools.
all right, so what do you have? What do you have for the young? What do you have for Josh? Anything? I'm just gonna peek over and help out. Casey for a minute. I don't know if you had anything as we were touching on baseball. Where's your list anyway?
I think I may have accidentally
Oh,
left it
okay.
out there.
Do you have any? Do you want to steal mine? Maybe ask him a question, or do you want to go into softball?
Sure. I'll look at this.
Well, we touched on some of the pitches. You got the big matchup coming next week.
Yeah.
Right there with the Taunton.
Right there at the Taunton.
Yeah, Taunton and
Franklin.
Franklin.
Right
Yep, that's big.
That's
Like
gonna-
probably decide the division and the conference. And then you have a couple of guys. You mentioned that Drew Middleton just now going to private school. So, but I don't know if you had anything. Unless you have something off the cuff. I mean, Josh is ready. He's been practicing all week for this.
I didn't even know it was coming in, but I should just in case.
Some knucklehead gave him the wrong day, but we won't mention his. All I know is his initials are DD. I know that much.
That's got to narrow it down somewhat.
But if you're cool, we can continue with softball.
Okay. We can go on to softball.
All right, so go ahead.
So it looks like King Philip and Taunton are neck and neck when it comes to softball. Both have 4 wins and 0 losses.
Yeah, they're the perennial powers, Taunton and KP. Every year, it seems like it's going to come down to them and the Kelly Rex. This year in particular, KP's back a little bit. KP was down just a little bit. I'm down for them. It's all relative, but they were down for them a little bit in 2019. But they seem to have gotten sort of an influx of talent coming into the season. They have a new coach. Kate Fallon Como has taken over. The former Franklin coach, she moved over to KP, and they're off to a great start. Taunton is off to an even better start, if that's possible. I mean, plus 85 run differential through 7 games is unbelievable. Obviously it's going to come down to the two of them. I think coming into the season, everybody knew it was going to come down to the two of them for the league title. And so far it's played out exactly like that. And the exciting part is they play each other the final 2 games of the regular season. So not only is that great preparation for potentially in the playoffs, but also assuming both teams are opting in, but also, to have the league title come down to those final 2 games is really exciting. But Taunton is just, I don't think they're as good as the 2018 team that won the state title. But Kelsey White might be the best pitcher in the state right now.
I agree.
And, I've only gotten to see her throw against 3 batters this year because I went to 1 game and she didn't start. Sam Lincoln, the freshman, got the start, who's also phenomenal. Yeah. And honestly, Taunton probably is the 2 best pitchers in the league. But Kelsey might be throwing as hard as any pitcher I've ever covered. And again, it was only 3 batters.
But you can tell, from your face, you can tell it's pretty impressive.
Very impressive. The accuracy is still there. She's always been one of the most accurate pitchers. But now she's throwing as hard as anybody I've seen, and that includes players like Shannon Smith and pitchers that were historically great.
Yeah.
I mean, she was our player of the week last week. She had 38 strikeouts in 21 innings. She struck out 14 yesterday, and I believe that they only played 5 innings. So she struck out all but 1 out was recorded by a strikeout. So, she's just on another level right now. And when you have pitching in softball, that makes all the difference. So Taunton is probably the favorite, I think, right now. But
plus they get the new skipper. They got Carrie over there because Lori's gone.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a big thing too. I mean, she didn't get the chance. Maybe it's actually kind of a benefit to not have to step in a year after. And I don't say this word to be dramatic. I mean, Dave's a legend. He was there for 2 decades and had incredible success at Taunton. And it's hard to follow in those footsteps. And luckily, there's plenty of talent there. And Dave is at all the games, of course.
Yeah,
exactly. So I got to see him when I went to cover them against Attleboro. And, it's just they have a ton of talent. Again, it may not be top to bottom and the lineup as strong as it was the year that they won the state title, but that still still a cut above most teams. And when you have that pitching, that makes all the difference. And Taunton definitely has that with Kelsey. She's on fire. I would say that she's got to be in the running for things like Gatorade Player of the Year and things like that.
All right, so we're going to take our first break. If you want to call in, we come back at 508-222-1320. We have Josh Perry from the Hockomock Sports. Joe DeVerns is going to step in, and the Sportsmaster is going to step out. So what we're going to do now is you're going to take your mouse, right, and you're going to see what's flashing?
Yeah, this one?
Yep. And we're going to do this. We'll be back with more right after this.
Hey, welcome back to 4 Deep Sports Talk here at the news station, 1320 AM, WARA. We now have Joe DeVerns in the studio with us, and we continue to talk to Josh Perry from HockomockSports.com.
She's getting better. I can feel it.
That's great.
She's getting better. All right, so Joe, you probably heard a little bit. I was trying to, well, he definitely knows what he's talking about, and he's a great guy, so it's a lot easier to have a guy like Josh Perry. We got to get Ryan in here. I don't know. He keeps on, you know.
Yeah, I texted him earlier. This is my gig. This is
the third year, I believe, we had the pleasure of having you in studio. I think it's 3 years. Because we didn't have you in the back. Did we have you in the back before? So that's 4 years. That's been around 4 years. So again, Joe DeVerns joining us now. You want to call in 508-222-1320. And make sure you're watching the mics. You can't do your phone. Well, you can. Once you get better, you can start doing that. But so we talked a little bit about Kelsey White. She's on it from Taunton. She's on her way to Villanova. So when I see her pitch, or when I see some of the stats, and I get lucky, I get the sheet from Carrie will send me the scorebook. She does it in nice format and all that. So she had 14 Ks in that last one against Foxborough.
Right.
But then, like you said, that's an unbelievable team. But all these other teams are slowly starting to make themselves known. You get Attleboro. Franklin's trying to get themselves, after the couple years before COVID, they went on that great run. And then they fell short from Taunton the year they won that state title. So overall, just touching base on the Kelly Rex. And again, it's going to probably come down to King Philip and Taunton again. Any other thing that sticks out about that conference?
I think that as somebody who was involved in the program many years ago, when my dad was JV coach over there, and just I kind of grew up doing things like Sagra and the South Attleboro girls rec stuff, doing softball for that. Attleboro has come a long way as a program, and I think they've got a decent team this year. They've got a lot of balance. They've got a couple of pitchers, And they're coming off a really impressive win over North Attleboro. North Attleboro is probably the third best team in the league. Not probably. I think that they're the third best team in the league behind Taunton, behind Franklin and KP. Excuse me, behind Taunton and KP. And you know, it was a really good win, a 3-1 win. It just shows where Attleboro's at. I mean, they're the only team to have scored runs against Taunton this year.
Yeah.
Granted, they struck out 16 times in that game, but they did get 2 runs and made it interesting in the 7th inning there. And you know, at 5-2 overall, the 2-2 in the league, but those 2 losses were both to Taunton. 5-2 overall, a good win over North. I think Attleboro's come a long way. They've been in the playoffs the last couple of years, and you know, it seems like they're a program sort of on the rise, which is good to see. I think Franklin is sort of adjusting. You know, they had a lot of turnover from 2 years ago, not just in the coaching staff. Katie Holbrook has taken over, but also, you know, just from a player standpoint, I think they only brought 2 players back. So that, you know, and that's kind of that's tough when you have such a little experience at the varsity level. On the other side, North Attleboro, they've got 2 really strong sophomore pitchers. They come into the season as the heavy favorites in the Davenport division. They won it 2 years ago. Foxborough has an 8th grader. Emma Callahan's their starting pitcher, and you know, it's a pro. They get a waiver because, you know, I don't even know if they have a JV team this year. Their numbers are so down, but she's come in and she's been really impressive, especially as an 8th grader. Obviously, playing in what's probably the most competitive league in the state when it comes to softball. So you know, they're sitting at 3-1, and they've gotten off to a great start, which is really kind of unexpected. They've always been a team that gets into the playoffs through the Sullivan rule, and then, you know, can do some damage in D3.
Yeah.
But it's tough when you're having to play the likes of Taunton and KP and Mansfield and Attleboro and Franklin and even North Attleboro. You have to play them twice. So it's good to see them get off to a good start. They've got some talent for sure on that team. So to see them be 3-1 right now is great.
So what do you anticipate on happening for the rest of the spring season? Basically in every sport I'm talking about.
Well, let's start with baseball and softball.
Well, baseball and softball.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, it's hard to say because we're only a couple of weeks in. There's still a few weeks left, and everything is so compressed this year because we're trying to get all of these games in to try to get a state tournament as well, because that was a big deal prior to the season, was that they needed to have a state tournament, which is, I think, for the kids is great. But now I'm wondering if they're starting to regret it just because of how many games they're going to have to try to play in such a short period of time. But I think that what I would expect is title races that are going to come down to the wire. I think that we're going to see, obviously we talked about softball, that Taunton and KP don't play each other until the final week of the season, but I think you're going to see a lot of title races. I think you're going to see a lot of competitive play. And it'll be interesting to see how things pan out as we go into June, because, you know, seniors are out of school now and summer, it's nice. You know, we'll see how the teams that can keep their focus, I think, are the teams that are going to do well. And that's kind of always a challenge in the spring, but I think this spring in particular, it's going to be extremely challenging as teams, you know, you're looking, if you're a Taunton or a KP and you have a shot at winning a state title, that means you're playing all the way until 4th of July.
Yeah, exactly.
And for most of these kids, they've got tournaments, they've got other things that they've got planned. Also, you know, it's summer, like they maybe have a summer before school comes back again in September. So,
do you think it has something to do with like the COVID pandemic, like restricting everything like that they're doing?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, it was because they didn't play 2 years ago. Obviously, they wanted to have a season first off, but because they didn't play at all, there was this idea that they needed to have a state tournament as well. And whatever your thoughts on it are, they needed to try to squeeze that in.
Yeah.
So now you're squeezing in a 14-game season in a season that's usually, I mean, spring is always like games all the time. It's always really compressed. But now you're trying to squeeze everything in and then try to get into a sectional. So, you know, which everybody technically is eligible for. If you're willing to opt in, you're in the playoffs regardless of your record. So it could be a lot of games coming up. in a really short period of time.
Until like the 4th of July, like you said.
State championships are scheduled, I think, for July 3rd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's the final day of the season. So
You can put your mic down a little bit more.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, ask away.
Yeah, I actually, you were talking about how seniors graduate early. I didn't think about that before. How some people use that time to train while others will use it to party and hang out with their friends.
Yeah.
I really thought about that shake up the rankings at like the end of the season a little bit.
it can be tough. I mean, obviously there are certain teams that, if their expectation is we're going to go try to win a state title, then it's easier to keep the focus. It's harder for teams where you're just kind of playing out the season.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, it's hard when you have a chance to start your summer and you're done with school. You're not going to school every single day, so now you have to keep yourself getting up at a certain time. You have to keep yourself practicing, keep yourself in shape, that kind of thing. That's easier to do when you have to go to school every day and then you just leave school and go to practice. And, it's a little bit harder when you have so much free time.
Yeah, they kind of have to make like a whole new schedule now because of that. I never really thought about that.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. That's something that's a thing that everybody deals with in the spring season, regardless of, COVID or otherwise. That's something that goes on every year. It's going to be a little bit tougher because usually season ends second, third week of June. Now you get an extra 2 weeks on top of that. And for a lot of these kids, if you're playing at that level and you're that good, most of the time you have showcase tournaments, you have AAU teams that you're playing on for other sports, maybe, basketball, for instance, club hockey, club soccer. Whatever the case may be, there's a lot that's usually going on at that point. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see how teams can manage that. We've had teams in the past that we thought state title contenders for sure, and then the end of the season rolls around and you can kind of tell maybe they checked out a little bit. Maybe they're not as into it. Next thing you know, they lose a playoff game that they had no business losing, and season ends pretty early.
All right, so let's. That pretty much wraps up softball. Do you have anything else in softball?
No, I didn't really have anything for softball.
All right, so that's yeah. Well,
I actually have some stats for softball.
Do you have stats? Or do you have a question for him?
Well,
what do you got?
Basically both. So I have the Sharon and KP game.
Yeah.
KP, which won 14-1.
Yeah.
And Jordan Bennett and Emma Sheehan, they combined for a one-hitter with 7 strikeouts to lead KP to a win at home. And Meg Sherwood went 2 for 2, including a home run, driving in 4 total runs, while freshman Maddie Paschke, forgive me if I said that wrong, was 3 for 3 with a home run. Charlotte Raymond added a couple of hits, including a triple for the Warriors. And Trinity Payne hit a solo home run for the Eagles. Does any of one of those players stand out to you?
Especially in the Sharon team because they're so young. Does anything come to mind with Sharon?
Well, I think Trinity is probably their standout player.
Yeah.
This season, she's their starting pitcher, and she's probably been their leading hitter to this point in the season. She's a power hitter. She's a basketball player. I think she's probably 5'10", 5'11", something like that.
Yeah.
She plays power forward for basketball. So she's got good size, which is great when you're a pitcher because obviously it just adds that extra couple miles an hour,
Yeah.
even more intimidating. But she's a big power bat in their lineup, and she's been really sort of their standout player to this point in the season. It's again, it's kind of a mismatch when they're playing KP, and I don't mean any disrespect to Sharon when I say that. I think they know it when they're going in. But they're, they continue to compete. They're
a scrappy little team there, right?
Yeah, they're continuing to fight every game, and they're in every game. They've had a couple of tough losses where they were leading late, and then Canton made a big comeback. I think in the 6th inning of one of their games to grab a win. But yeah, so going up against KP, I think 14-1 was kind of an expected result. That's just kind of the way it goes. But KP beats a lot of teams 14-1, so that's not that's not an insult. I don't think to Sharon.
No, I think you're right. When the coaches know what they have. They're not stupid. They know what they have for
Yeah,
the
and when
squad, and see
know-
a powerhouse come in like that. It's so consistent.
Right.
You
Well, I
know.
was gonna say every sport's like that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know when you're playing the teams that, should win. That's
Exactly.
the way it goes.
All right, so how we doing, kid? Ready for a break?
Yeah.
All right, so get ready to cue it up, right? Make sure you get the mic ready. First, get the mic on the flashing light first.
The CP
Nope,
one.
on the top. You want to make sure you get that going, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll step away. You're listening to 4 Deep Sports Talk here on the news station, 1320 AM WARA. We have the privilege of having Josh Perry from Hockomock Sports. We're going to pick on Ryan because he's not here. No, only kidding, Ryan. We'll have more of girls lacrosse and everything else, spring sports, Hockomock-wise. We'll try to get it in. We'll be back with more right after this. Yep, cue them all up.
Hey, welcome back. You're listening to 4 Deep Sports Talk here at the news station. We have Justin Ferreira back in the studio with us. We have Dominic Damiano, and from HockomockSports.com, Josh Perry. You can call in at 508-222-1320.
All right, very good, young lady. So bring that other one up you just brought down. That fade. Bring it all the way up where it was before. Perfecto. All right, so now we're going to jump on boys lacrosse, and we'll start with no, we're going to give the girls some love.
Okay.
All right, let's give the girls some love. So we're going to go Kelly Rex. No, we'll even switch it up because we love these girls. We're going to go smaller Kelly. We're going to go Davenport girls. Make sure I'm not pegging out on the meter too. Okay. Did you hold that spot? Atta girl. A lot of training going on, Josh. I apologize.
No, that's okay. No, that's great.
Trying something new here.
Trying something new. All right, so we got Foxborough 6-1 overall, 4-0 in the conference. Canton, the Lady Bulldogs are 2-0, 4-2 overall. North Attleboro 1-1, 2-3 overall, and all the Rams 1-3. And Sharon, brand new young team, 0-4, 1-6. And again, all the Rams 2-5, and finishing up, going backwards here, North Attleboro 2-3. Shocker, Foxborough, the Lady Warriors are that good?
Yeah. So lacrosse in the Hawk is it coming into the season, and I think it's fair to say for boys and girls, we already know the Kelly Rex we kind of know where that's going. We can talk about them in a second.
Yeah.
But in the Davenport, for the girls, Foxborough is the cream of the crop. They have been for, I think they've won 8 straight league titles in the Davenport division. So, they've been the dominant force. In 2019, they came off their first ever sectional title. They graduated quite a few players from that team. Most notably, of course, Sophia DeCenzo's playing D1 and was part of the U.S. national team program, youth program. So, obviously they lost a lot from a couple of years ago, and they have a new coach this year. Kathleen McCulloch has joined over from Medfield, replacing Brittany Sherry, who's now at Mansfield. So, there's obviously a lot of turnover there, but that's a program that just keeps churning out great lacrosse players. And they had plenty of talent, even with graduating as many players as they did. They had so much talent coming back. Ella Warius and Lily Vay being the sort of standout seniors, but they've got a lot of really good underclassmen that are in there. And, really we do have a couple of tiers. We have Franklin, then we have Foxborough, and then it's kind of a lot of everybody else underneath that. I would probably put KP at the third spot, and then there's a lot of mix from there where teams are a lot more competitive. But you can see, we have two teams that have scored 120 goals, which is 50 more than the next best team.
That's crazy. It's a lot of goals.
And that's just been the way it's been when you have the youth programs that they do, and that really has led to this level of success.
Right.
But yeah, Foxborough is a very strong team. Their only loss of the season was their opener against Franklin. So they've kind of rolled through the first couple weeks of the season, coming off a couple of big wins against Oliver Ames, which was a team that we thought maybe could give them a little bit of a challenge. I think they're the heavy favorites to win the Davenport title again this year. And Canton is 2-0. They're 4-2 on the season. I'm not sure that they're on Foxborough's level, but it's definitely an improvement from where they were a couple of years ago. A relatively young team. They've got some players that got a little bit of experience a couple of years ago that are now juniors and seniors, and they've got some really impressive freshmen and sophomore that have made their debuts this year. Some talent there. North Attleboro is a team that's kind of a mystery to me, to be honest. I don't really know a whole lot about them. They have a new coach this year, and they graduated a lot from a couple years ago. I think last year's team was still going to be pretty talented, but they lost a couple of players that went and played in college. And I just don't really know what to make of them so far this season. OA, I think, is a talented team. They just it's a lot of athletes. I'm not sure if they have a lot of lacrosse players, if that makes sense. And again, that's no insult to anybody because they're a super athletic team.
Yeah.
But when you're playing the likes of Foxborough, like they did the last two games, which is why they're now 1-3 in the league, they came off KP and then had to play Foxborough twice, which is not an easy week. Sharon actually has one of the best players in the league, Jenna Goldstein. She's a senior this year. Just not a lot of depth, a lot of young players on their roster. So this is kind of a step back for them. They had been in the playoffs the last few years. But again, it's a lot of turnover. They graduated, Emma Eberhard had scored, I think she led the league, and I think she had 120 points or something like that her senior year. So obviously when you lose somebody like that, that's going to be tough.
Absolutely.
So Jenna's kind of doing a lot. She's their leading scorer, and she's doing a lot for them. They just got a very young team this year. So yeah, I think the Davenport is playing out more or less like we would have expected. And then the Kelly Rex is Franklin's.
That's
Franklin's
their baby.
They haven't lost a league game since 2012.
Jeepers crow.
Over 80 straight wins in the league.
Wow, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's been dominance. It doesn't even cover it at this point. They've emerged not only as a league power but as a statewide power. Their losses, if they have any, on the course of the year, are to the likes of Westwood and Notre Dame and Needham.
Like
Lincoln
the Bay State, Tri-Valley
well,
teams.
Yeah, they get into the they compete with the top teams in the state every year, and they've risen to that level as a program. Pretty much everybody on their roster is going somewhere for college. Most of them D1. So it's just a loaded team, and they've already. I think they've beaten probably their two biggest competitors. They beat Foxborough in the season opener, and then beat KP over the last 2 days, which more or less seals their seals the league title for them. Right now we have them at 3-0. I don't know that we have yesterday's score, but I know that they beat KP. I just don't know that we have the score for it yet.
I think we have that somewhere.
But so they're actually 4-0 in the league and 7-0 overall, and KP is now 2-2. KP is still a really good team. I think they'll end up in second place. That's almost, I would say they're the third best team in the league this year. So,
what makes you think they'll end up in second?
I just think that they're talent-wise, they're the third best. They're the third best team right now. Franklin and Foxborough are just a step ahead, but definitely KP is a strong program, and it's just tough. You play Franklin back-to-back games, you get so hyped up for those games, and then Franklin's just really good. There's just no two ways about it. 120 goals for, 25 against speaks for itself.
I apologize. I got to take a step back, and this might answer Casey's other question this morning. Who's the new skipper over in North Attleboro now? Who's the new coach?
That's a very good question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me just.
It's in those notes.
Yeah. So it's because the problem is that they had a new coach for 2019 was Janet Marr, who played in the league, so we knew her. But then I guess she's not coaching this year, so they have a new coach.
And we've been trying to get her on. Casey played over there for her.
Oh, Karen Folan?
No, it's somebody else. He said, right? It's
Karen does the field hockey.
Yeah, that's
I'm field hockey. That's right.
That's
I'm
who
sorry.
I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't feel. You know what?
For lacrosse, I don't apologize. I just
no, that's fine.
I know she used to coach lacrosse. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's where I got confused because we were trying to get one of those North Attleboro girls coaches. I thought I'm thinking lacrosse, but obviously she played field hockey. So 80 wins. For that's incredible. We didn't get this
counting.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
How we doing for time? Good.
Yeah, about 3 minutes left.
Excellent. All right, let's skip over to a little bit of boys. Let's go to boys lacrosse.
I'll just say one thing too about the girls too. So one of the things that's interesting is that although we have those teams that stand out for sure. Some of the teams that aren't doing as well still have standout players. For instance, one of the best players in the league, the reigning MVP, plays for Taunton, Alana Tavares. She just recorded her 250th goal of her career. And she's one of the most talented players in the league. It may not be a program that's on that level of KP or Foxborough or Franklin. Just like I mentioned with Sharon, having Jenna Goldstein, who's she's been a standout for now 3 years because of the one that got taken away. But everybody's got great talent. It's just a matter of having the depth and being able to put it all together, and that's where Franklin and Foxborough and I would say KP are probably that step above, is that they have the talent going all the way across, where some of the teams have one or two really good players. But I think it's important to realize that even in a league that is as playing out as expected with Franklin being so dominant, there are talented players really across the board.
Well, the other thing you mentioned, please straighten me out if I'm getting this wrong. We touched this on softball. Some of these teams, these young teams, will have a good lead, and then the expansion from these other teams will just take it away. Is that fair to say, even in girls lacrosse?
Well, yeah. I think it's just. It's hard in girls lacrosse too, or in lacrosse in general, because you have to draw. Yeah. So it's not like if the other team scores, you get the ball and get to start. Foxborough, when they played Attleboro, I think Attleboro maybe touched the ball 3-4 times maybe in the first half total. That's hard. It's hard to come back. You get down early, and then Foxborough just kept scoring, getting the ball back, and
scoring and scoring.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's just the way it can go sometimes. If a team has that level of talent that can keep getting the ball back. Franklin boys do the same thing with their face-off guys. So it can be tough to mount a comeback in those situations against good teams.
120 points for, that's crazy.
And it's actually more because they played yesterday. We don't have that score in there. So they're actually leading the league in goals and goals against. I just don't know exactly what the score was yesterday against.
That's
KC.
fine. I mean, so you guys will have it up quicker than a lot of other sites. I tell you that all the time. You guys do a great job. That's why it's always a pleasure to get you in. And someday we'll get Ryan in. We'll get it for a break.
25 seconds.
25 seconds. So I'll try to verbally work this into the break without butchering the English language that I can do so well on the radio. All right. So with that being said, we're going to take our last break. Joe DeVerns will come in. We'll touch up on scores. We'll try to finish up with boys lacrosse. And as we have the privilege again of having Josh Perry from HockerMockSports.com. We'll be back with more right after this. Hey, welcome back. She forgot to point to me, but I knew what she meant. You're listening and watching 4 Deep Sports Talk here on the news station, 1320 AM WARA, and online, all one word, 4deepsportstalk.com. I forgot to ask Jim Jones on the upcoming baseball and softball coverage here on AACS. I'm going to try to get better at that as we try to wrap up with our excellent interview with a great guy, Josh Perry. I should have just said Josh Perry. And we're still picking on Ryan a little bit. Hopefully we'll get him in there and he can add some insight as well. They do a great job covering a very competitive, a very athletic conference. And we just started a little bit to talk about the boys lacrosse. We had the privilege of talking about baseball, softball, girls lacrosse, and now we're going to dive into, girls lacrosse. Now we'll dive into boys lacrosse. I'll finally get it out of my mouth sooner or later. I apologize. And then we'll try to do some scores. Joe DeVerns is now joining us. Hi, Joe's mom, listen, back home. And yes, I hope he finished his chores so he's not in trouble. So do you want to dive into boys lacrosse? Or?
Yeah, I actually had a question about how you were talking about like Taunton and King Philip, I think you said, were the softball major powerhouses earlier. Yeah, so would you say like Franklin and Foxborough are the main powerhouses for lacrosse, or what would you say for that?
For sure, yeah. I mean, the Davenport has been a little bit more competitive on the boys' side in terms of the league title has gone back and forth. Canton's won a couple of league titles this decade. I think Sharon may have won one, or North Attleboro won one. Excuse me, not Sharon. So it's not set in stone. For instance, that Foxborough is going to win on the boys' side, like it's kind of been on the girls' side. But certainly there are two most well-known programs. honestly, the Kelly Rex division, when we come into the season, we can pretty much pencil Franklin in. And again, I mean no disrespect to the other teams in the league. Franklin has emerged on the boys' side as well. And I think it's hard. I think it's been a longer road maybe on the boys' side as one of the state, as a state power. I mean, they're a team that's made it to the semifinals a couple of times in the South, which, is a pretty good accomplishment considering the level of talent that you have to go through to get there. And they took Duxbury right down to the wire in 2019. And everybody knows Duxbury is, the historic program in the state. So these are great accomplishments. They're taking on some of the best teams. They're playing the Hinghams and the BC Highs and Long Meadows of the world, which is a huge step forward as a program. Franklin is definitely the class. So the girls have won 80 straight league games. Franklin has lost once, and it's at least 50 games. It may be closing into 60.
Wow.
They lost a couple of years ago to Foxborough in overtime, I think. Maybe even might have been like triple overtime. I think they lost, but that was their first loss in over 40 games, and they went undefeated 2019 in the league. So it's an add-on at least another 10. So yeah, they're definitely a dominant program. They won yesterday. They beat KP again, so they're now 4-0 in the league. KP is probably the second best team in the Kelly Rex, probably the third best team in the league. Again, similar to girls. Which I think makes sense. If you have a youth program for one, you're probably going to have a youth program for the other, and that really plays a huge role. But yeah, those are really, I think, our two dominant programs in boys. But this year is not. This year could be one of those years. For Foxborough is very young. Numbers have kind of dropped for them, kind of across the board in all their sports for spring, but they're a very young team this year. Still very talented. But Canton has a little bit more experience, and they're both 4-0 right now in the league. Canton is a legit shot at winning the title this year. I think coming into the season, it was really a kind of a toss up between the two of them. So it'll be interesting to see when they finally get to match up, how that plays out.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the feeder system some of these programs have. You see it with Fian and hockey. Sometimes they'll have a young feeder system, and that's the big thing, and I don't know why some of these other schools don't do it like that. They have their own individual reasons why they want to run their youth program their way, but you can definitely see it paying off, like you just mentioned, Franklin and some of these other high schools. It just steps up. They just step into the next group, and these kids, in my opinion, they just have to get used to the speed of the game, and because they use basically the same offense, same defense, and I know really nothing about lacrosse. Mm-hmm. I hate to say that, but, there's a goal. Whoever schools... Like, what's his... Oh, my God, I had a good joke, and I blew it again. Bob Cousy used to say, whoever gets the most baskets in the cylinder by the time the clock ends wins the game. Same thing with lacrosse. Whoever gets the most goals, but you got to have that system. And it makes it a lot easier for the head coaches, too, And you see that
I think
all the time.
For Franklin, that's been one of their biggest advantages, really across the board in all their sports, is that their youth programs are really strong. But lacrosse in particular, they're just pulling in kids that are D1 recruits left and right. They graduated 3 kids who went D1 from 2019, but Matt Lazzaro's back. He's a All-American. He's going to Penn State. Luke Davis is a sophomore. His two brothers are both playing in college, one playing at UMass Lowell. He stepped right in. He's going to be probably another D1 recruit as an attacker. Jaden Consigli just transferred in from Northbridge, I think, him and his brother Joe. So they just added another kid who's a sophomore who's going to be a standout, possibly a D1 recruit. His brother is a senior midi who's going to Assumption. So they just keep rolling in talent, and it's hard. It's hard when you compete like that. And, I was there for Franklin Foxborough first game of the season, and Franklin had more kids on their bench than Foxborough has as a program. And that's hard. It's hard to kind of stay at that level, but credit to Foxborough. They've been Franklin's probably toughest competition in the league, in terms of playing them the closest. So maybe not this year, but again, young team, first game of the season, you got to make accommodations for that. But yeah, I think it's the youth thing is, I think, a really big factor.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially for lacrosse, which is for some towns a really new program, like Attleboro, and is really young. Taunton is still trying to build a a program for boys. Stoughton is, I think, in their second varsity season, maybe their first. I think they played in 2019 as well. That makes a big difference. You're playing an established power, and here you are in your third season of existence. These kids have never really played at this level, so it can make it tough.
Yeah, I didn't realize Franklin was like a manufacturing plant for D1 prospects. That's crazy.
Kind of. Yeah, it's kind of turned out that way. They've got a couple kids at Rutgers, a couple kids at UMass Lowell. I think 2 of their attackers from 2019 are at UMass Lowell. And then Lazaro is going to Penn State, which is obviously a huge, that's a national power, So, there's definitely, they just keep rolling them out year after year. It is kind of crazy that.
It is.
And again, other teams have talented players too. Sam Matson from KP is off to a great start. He's going to UMass. So there's talent across the board, but Franklin just kind of pulls it all together. So
I was hoping to get the scores in, but there's too many scores. We only have a couple minutes left. And before I forget, we don't get cut off with the break, I want to thank you, Josh, for coming. It's great to see you again. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And thank you for putting up with my erratic, crazy schedule. I totally apologize. But on that note, I just want to make sure that people, next week we'll have the new volleyball coach from Bishop Fee High School, Coach Brewski. She'll be in and we'll talk to her via the phone. Then we'll have Elaine Clement, the new 4 Deep Sports. Actually, she should have been one. She should have been number 1, but I didn't. I only had a small vote. But second annual girls basketball coach of the year, we'll have her in. I know we have some more people trying to get the girls basketball coach over at Bishop Fee, trying to get her in. And then now that we know we have some new coaches out there, we'll try to reach them, especially new coach in girls lacrosse over at North Attleboro. How are we doing, young lady, with the grade time?
About 3 minutes left.
3 minutes?
North Attleboro field hockey, by the way.
And field hockey, yep. She's still trying to get that one, Josh. Joel's trying to get her down. So we really can't, let's just say this. We'll just touch on this really fast. I mean really fast. So we'll touch outdoor track without trying to, right now, any surprises with Kelly Ricks and Davenport as far as Stoughton and Davenport and Mansfield leading the way right there?
I don't think so. I think they've been pretty strong programs for the last couple of years. I think OA will give a good challenge on the Davenport side.
Excellent.
Since they just moved down to the Davenport, or moved to the Davenport. I don't like to say down to.
Right, right. And then girls outdoor track. You got Mansfield and Canton again. Mm-hmm. No, any surprise there?
No, I think again North and OA will be right there in the Davenport. Mansfield's been a pretty strong program. They have a pretty strong track program. So.
And then I hate to run through this, but we're getting running out of time. You got Franklin boys tennis and North Attleboro in boys tennis. Still 2 strong powerhouses.
Yeah, I think so. Sharon is always the team to beat in boys tennis for the Davenport, but North Attleboro is usually the team that's right there with them.
And then, of course, tennis, you have King Philip, Attleboro right behind them, and then the Davenport, it's Foxborough, and you have North Attleboro right behind them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Foxborough girls are always really strong.
All right, so we will step away. We hope you enjoyed this hour of 4 Deep Sports Talk. We will catch you next time. Everyone have a fantastic weekend.